שמתקשים באנגלית. תודה. וברשותכם אנחנו מקליטים את המפגש הזה, אך ורק לצורך עריכה ולצורך סיכום. We're recording this message of this meeting for the purpose of summarizing the meeting and editing this. The participants will be edited out, so you will not be visible, only our speakers. So welcome to Tamara, James. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's a great honor. I think each one of you is a little bit of a celebrity, I think, because you've been doing some things, and yeah, your voice is heard and read. So I'm going to start here by sharing this presentation. So I hope everyone can see my screen. I'll just put the videos here. And so if you want, just sit down, have a cup of coffee, I hope. As I said, we will be recording this only for the purpose of summary and editing purposes. Those that by default are not muted should mute their microphones. And if you have questions, ask them in the chat. We will take care of them. So, שבו בנחת תהנו. אם יש שאלות, שימו אותן בצ'אט. אנחנו נתייחס אליהן. So today's topic is Exit the WHO. We have a big task ahead of us. יש בפנינו משימה רצינית פה, ואנחנו מקווים שהמפגש הזה יהיה מועיל ונעים לכולם ונלמד דברים חדשים, ונתחיל. אז מטרת הפגישה שלנו היום, the purpose of this meeting, יש לנו שני דוברים, ג'יימס רוגוסקי מארצות הברית, ודוקטור תמרה טומינן, שהיא רופאה ישראלית, פינית ישראלית, והיא פעילה במסגרת קבוצה שעובדת בפינלנד. And then after we have had our speakers, we will take time for some questions and answers, whatever you have in the chat. כאמור, מה שתשימו בצ'אט, שאפשר. אז קצת הקדמה, introduction here. למי שלא יודע, בין התאריכים 21 ל-30 במאי 2023, תתקיים הפגישה מספר 76 של ה-World Health Assembly בג'נבה. אייטם, או חלק 14.2 באג'נדה מתייחס לשינויים המוצעים ב-International Health Regulations בתקנות הבריאות הבינלאומיות. ספציפית זה מתייחס למסמך A76/9, וזה הטיוטה מספר 1 שלו. זאת אומרת, טיוטה 0 כבר הוצגה אז בספטמבר, אם אני לא טועה, וניסו להצביע עליה, ואז כמה מדינות באפריקה התנגדו, וזה לא הצליח, אז עכשיו הם משפרים, ומביאים את זה שוב לדיון. מעריכים שבמאי 2024, באספה מספר 77, המסמך הזה יגיע לאיזשהו סיום, והנציגים של המדינות יחתמו עליו, יחד עם הברית הזאת, או איך שלא נקרא לה, the WHO Pandemic Treaty. אוקיי. אז למה אנחנו בעצם פה? אנחנו פה כדי לשתף מידע. אנחנו רוצים להבין למה אנחנו בעצם, איך הגענו לאן שהגענו. We would like to understand the complex situation that we're in. קצת הדרכה על איך לארגן פעילות, guidance on how to arrange activities, איך לקחת אחריות. אנחנו אחראים בעצם לחיים שלנו. קצת השראה גם, לפעמים צריך את זה, לפעמים צריך את הדחיפה הקטנה הזאת בגב כדי לקום ולעשות דברים, להתחבר עם אנשים בכל העולם, לא רק בארץ, ולהתחיל לפעול. And our sources of inspiration today are, as I said, are James Roguski, a blogger and opinion leader, and he will share ideas for actions that we can take towards claiming our sovereignty, and stories of activism. אז הוא ישתף איתנו ככה קצת דברים ורעיונות למה אנחנו יכולים לעשות. And we have Dr. Tamar Tuminen, והיא תספר לנו על העבודה שהיא עשתה בפינלנד עם הקבוצה שלה עד כה. מקווים מכאן להמשיך ולהתקדם. All right, so James, this is a little bit about your bio. אז ג'יימס הוא חוקר, סופר, אוהב, מחבב בריאות טבעית ואקטיביסט, שמאמין שהמערכות הישנות צריכות להתפורר. באמת 22 הוא בעצם נחשף למסמכים של כל הנושא של תקנות הבריאות הבינלאומיות, והיה קול מרכזי בהעלאת המודעות עליהם. עכשיו הוא עושה כל מה שהוא יכול בעצם, ובגלל זה הוא גם כאן איתנו, כדי לחשוף את האג'נדה הסודית הזאת, שמעבר לברית הפנדמיות, או הסכם הפנדמיות, והוא פשוט מנסה, וכמובן כל הניסיונות לעדכון התקנות. So, הוויז'ן שלו הוא יצא החוצה, לפרוש מההוא, ולהתחיל עם הדברים החדשים. All right, James, and then I'm going to put the microphone to you now. And the first thing that I really wanted to ask you, and maybe this will start, is like how you became aware of, or like, what was the trigger for you to start or to understand that something here is fishy? Let's say 3 years ago, or even more.
Well, actually, it all began just slightly less than 1 year ago. I'm hoping that everybody can hear me just fine. Literally in, I believe, January of 2022, I was working in my yard. I live in the Los Angeles area and have a very small yard, but I've turned it into a little bit of a food forest. I've got a dozen fruit trees and so forth, very, very small area. But I was feeling relatively good. And, you know, in general, life is good and fine, even with all the pandemic things. But I just stopped and I raised my eyes up to the sky and I said, God, I volunteer. If there's anything that I could do, just let me know and I'll do it. And I've done that a handful of times in my life. And sometimes it hits you like a lightning bolt. You get an idea and, oh, okay, great, I'll do that. Well, it actually took a couple of months. I didn't get, you know, a bolt of lightning that struck me down and, you know, changed the course of my life. And in March of 2022, as it says in the bio here, I uncovered a document that was hidden in plain sight in a certain regard. And it was a document that was amendments to the international health regulations that had been proposed by the Biden administration. And when I downloaded that document and I started to read it, then I got a shiver down my spine and I realized that that was something that I had a certain set of talents that I could understand what was going on and I could help raise the awareness of people around the world. And so I'm based in Los Angeles in the United States. And on March 31st of last year, I wrote an article entitled "Wake Up and Smell the Burning of Our Constitution." And a lot of people paid attention to it. The word spread. And what I would like to do now is actually go back and forward at the same time and try to give everybody a background, you know, before where I got involved in this. And I actually really want to start with the end in mind. And so, you know, why would anybody here care about the things that I'm about to say? So the end of my story is this. The World Health Organization is in an ongoing series of negotiations to create new international law. You may have heard of it referred to as a pandemic treaty. So they want to create new agreements internationally. They also, at the same time, are attempting to change existing international law. That's referred to as the International Health Regulations. They want to amend that. The third thing is they actually did amend the regulations last year. Most people are completely unaware of that. And there's an 18-month period from last May, so we're 12 months into it, and there are 6 months remaining, where every nation on earth could simply write a letter to the WHO and say, no, thank you, we reject the amendments from last year. But everyone appears to be in a coma and is unaware of the fact that that happened last year, and every nation could reject them. And there's an additional thing going on through the United Nations to create some sort of high-level threats council, ostensibly to take over control of the world, during the next emergency. And so all of these negotiations to change international law, by the WHO's own words, they want them to be legally binding. And the end result is a concentration of power and authority, not just in the WHO, but even higher into one person, the Director General of the WHO. So many authorities could be transferred. I see it as a direct assault on our personal freedoms, our ability to make our own decisions about health, and even the way we live our lives, how we can travel. If you think that anything that happened over the last 3+ years was in any way bad, and I certainly do, please realize that all of that happened during a period of time where the WHO, as it has been from its very beginning, 75 years ago, they celebrated their 75th anniversary in April of this year. They are legally and technically an advisory organization. If you've ever heard anybody say that the WHO said this or the WHO recommended that, please understand that was all just advice. But what has happened, I've often referred to them as the World Hypnosis Organization, because somehow through the power of the media and propaganda and just misunderstanding, those recommendations have been viewed as mandatory. And nations and, like in the United States, different states and counties and cities and employers and so forth have misrepresented the power of the WHO and wrongfully given them authority that they did not have. So everything that's happened over the last 3+ years has been just based on their advice. Well, some of the proposed amendments would literally change the definition of the word recommendation. It currently is defined as non-binding advice. But Bangladesh proposed amending that to cross out the word non-binding. And Malaysia has proposed an amendment that says all of these recommendations shall be implemented, meaning they would become obligations. And so the gist of the story is that as bad as it has been over the last 3.5 or so years, it could be infinitely worse if those recommendations made by one person, the Director General of the WHO, would then be seen as obligations and mandates that people were leaving. And so if you feel that it's important for you to make the decisions about your life, one of the things that they're proposing is something that you're going to want to definitely research, and that's called One Health. Their belief is that they should be in control, not just of human health, but One Health encompasses human health, the health of your pets, the health of domesticated farm animals, wild animals, agriculture, the environment in general. This is essentially, in my opinion, a worldwide coup to take away personal freedoms, fundamental human rights, even your very dignity, along with your national sovereignty, and concentrate that power into the organization of the World Health Organization and the Director General, which I think would then be the Dictator General. Now, I'm not just making that up. Currently in the international, when I first read this a little more than a year ago, I thought that this was actually a good thing. In Article 3 of the International Health Regulations, as they stand right now, it says that the international health regulations shall be implemented, which means they must be implemented with full respect for the dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms of people. Well, of all places, India has proposed literally crossing out that language, crossing out that the regulation should be implemented with full respect for the dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms of people. Now, if I stop talking right now, that should be enough to be enough of a warning that these mostly secret negotiations are going on. Delegates from the 194 member nations have been meeting for more than a year now about the treaty, and for well over 6 months in regards to the amendments. They're negotiating changes that are absolutely, completely, to put it kindly, unacceptable. But we, the people, have not had a say in the matter. To give an idea of the structure of the WHO, there's 194 member nations. There are 2 observer nations, but the 194 member nations each get 1 vote at the yearly World Health Assembly. That's going to be starting actually next Sunday, the 21st to the 30th. So all the nations send delegates to the WHO, and they vote on, various changes that might be made. My understanding is that they are likely to not make final decisions about the treaty or the amendments this year. They're planning on next year. So I don't mean to stoke fear or panic or worry in anybody, but this is a call to action, because a year will slip by faster than you can blink an eye. And they plan on implementing all of these changes next year, while they have been very secretive in the negotiations. We do have some information about a 0 draft of the treaty and the original proposed amendments, that 94 nations submitted 307 changes to the existing international health regulations. So they're obviously proposing substantial changes. And I'm going to guess that the vast majority of people here and the vast majority of people all throughout the world are not aware of what they are. So over the last year, I think I've written 100 articles. And I think the simplest, easiest thing to remember is one webpage that I have, which is stopthewho.com. I've put all of the pertinent documents there. I've little booklet that has the highlights of everything that's there. If you just go to stopthewho.com and read a little bit of what's on that page, you will know more than 99% of your public servants, your members of parliament, premiers, prime ministers, city, county, local government. Step number 1, it's wonderful that everyone is here, is to become aware that these negotiations to concentrate power in the WHO are currently underway. I think everyone should form their own opinion of what they feel should or should not be done. And I've encouraged everyone, whether it's in writing or on video or audio format, to publicly state what it is your opinions are, because regardless of where we live in the world, if we feel that our public servants are supposed to, respond to the will of the people, we all have a responsibility to share our opinion with those public servants. If they then ignore us, well, we will have done our duty. We will have told them very clearly what we want. And if they fail to do our wishes, that's a different situation. We have to make the first move. We have to clearly be aware. That's step number one. Understand the issue. And I'm readily available. People can contact me in many different ways if you have any questions. But let me pass on what my opinion is about all of these negotiations. They're completely missing what should be very, very obvious. Whatever your opinion is of the past 3.5 years, there really should be, in my opinion, an after-event review so that we can gauge what is it that we need to learn from the last 3.5 years. Now, as many people as there's 117 people here on this meeting. I'm sure there's 117 opinions. And some of you may have a couple of conflicting opinions because in many ways it can be very confusing. But there's a couple of things about these negotiations that are not confusing at all. They're being done in secret, and the opinion of the people and the observations of true scientists, doctors, and people who have been in the field dealing with the problems that we've had over the past 3.5 years need to be heard in a legitimate forum, whether you want to call it an inquiry, a inquest, a tribunal, a grand jury, an investigation of whatever kind. In Canada, they're right in the middle of a national citizens inquiry where people are expressing their opinions. The world as a whole, and each individual nation, each individual community, and in my view, every individual person needs to get access to as much legitimate information as they possibly can and determine for themselves what was done right over the last 3.5 years, quite frankly, if anything, what was done wrong, and what has been absolutely catastrophic. Now, Tamara is going to talk on her knowledge base of the health aspects and all of the things that she feels are important. But the aspects go beyond that. Whether it's just the health issues that we were improperly informed about, and as things changed, the nature of the problems did not necessarily adapt to the changing reality. The social constructs of lockdowns and masking and the use of pharmaceutical drugs and so forth, all of that had positive and negative impact on all of our lives. And the language, and I realize there's a little language barrier here because I pretty much only speak English, but the language is being used to manipulate people. And in the English language and in the law, there are no legal definitions for words that we have all heard many people use. The word pandemic does not have a legal definition. A case of some disease does not have a legal definition. The words safe and effective, and even the word vaccine, they do not have legal definitions. So, I have learned over time that when I hear somebody say something like, oh, there are so many cases, we have a pandemic, and we have this vaccine that is safe and effective, I know that every aspect of that statement is false because they're using words that they are defining in their mind, and they assume that people will have a certain belief structure, but that belief structure is not a legal structure. So people have gotten away with things that we should not have allowed them to get away with by confusing us with language. And that's what's going on right now. They are secretly crafting new legalese new treaties or amendments to, existing regulations. And the greatest concern in my mind is really about the existing international health regulations, because as evidenced by what they did last year, and this causes a cognitive dissonance in everyone's mind. And so what I'm about to say is going to be hard for almost everybody to accept. In the World Health Assembly, most of which are completely unknown to everyone in the world, got together, decided to change the international health regulations. They did so, and those changes will go into effect even if no nation, no prime minister, no premier, no president, no parliament, no Senate or Congress does anything. The process by which amendments to the regulations are adopted simply requires everyone's silence. They decide upon the changes. We have a period of time to reject them. And if we don't reject them, they assume that we have accepted them. And that is a dangerous precedent that they did last year. So I've been trying for a year to raise everyone's awareness that that's what they did. And so far, I am honored and pleased and happy now to be reaching out to all the people here. There are groups in Australia and the United Kingdom and Ecuador and South Africa and the Netherlands and Finland, and I'm going to miss many, people who have done the homework. They have applied themselves. I'm absolutely confident that anybody on earth can look into this information and understand the changes that are being proposed primarily in secret. And so what I have tried and worked to do over the last year is to just dig out the evidence, dig out the official documents, read through all of the many boring words and watch the many boring meetings that they have, and pull out the points to make it easier for people, easier for every one of you to do a little bit of reading, a little bit of learning, and understand what they're trying to do, and form your own opinion, express that opinion, reach out to your public servants and tell them that they need to pay attention to this. And there are so many things that can and need to be done, but I'm very optimistic because I have already seen that the WHO is responding to our narrative. We have been saying around the world, we see what you're doing. We do not accept the fact that you're doing this and trying to keep it secret. We are aware of these many things that you're attempting to implement to take control of our lives, and we are not accepting that. We will not be complying with that. And I have seen that they are responding to our narrative and trying to cover up the facts with propaganda. And so what I expect to happen at this year's World Health Organization Assembly is very little in the way of actually documenting. They have given every indication that they're going to try to keep them secret. They're going to give a lot of propaganda about how what they're doing is so good for everybody. And we, the people, need to be able to read between the lines of what they're saying and realizing that they use the language in a manner that makes it sound like their wishes are to make everybody healthier. But if you read the international health regulations, they don't talk about health. They talk about surveillance and monitoring and reporting and emergency declaring and control regulations. If you read the proposed treaty, you realize that it's really all about money transfer. They want to direct billions of dollars into the pharmaceutical hospital emergency industrial complex to manufacture more drugs and more injections, while completely ignoring the lack of benefit that those things really had on people's health. And they want to centralize control in the Director General and in the WHO in general. And so I very much appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak to you. In essence, though, all of those negotiations are premature because we have failed to address the loss of our freedoms, the loss of our rights, the loss of our dignity, quite frankly, and the social controls, and quite frankly, the failed medical response to what I think many people believe, I certainly believe, was really a problem that was just blown out of proportion by propaganda and fear-mongering. Yes, many people suffered. No denying that many people died and were harmed, but the problems were made worse by the response. They were not made better. And to just assume that giving more power and more money and control to people who gave bad advice and then converting that advice into required obligations and orders would be a mistake of epic proportions. And I think everyone should learn what they can, speak up about it, and move forward, unify with the people who are like-minded, and realize that we can and must stop this takeover of all of our health. And I have every faith in the world. I volunteered to God to tell me what it is I should be doing. I don't pretend to be doing God's work. I'm not that kind of person. I wake up in the morning, and whatever guides me, whatever inspiration comes to me, I feel an obligation to help in whatever way I can. And so what I've been doing over the last year is anything that each and every one of you is not also capable of doing in your own way. So find in your heart what is right for you and do it, because we all have to live in this world as long as we intend to be here. So let's all work together to make it as good a future as we possibly can. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's amazing. I've been also following what's on the chat. So the chat is also bringing up a lot of ideas and are ready for some action. תודה לכל אלה שמפרסמים פה רעיונות לדברים שאנחנו יכולים כבר לעשות. So thank you very much, James, for your work and for making it accessible to everybody. That's the most important thing, because it's not something so obvious that one person takes on himself. And now I'm going to move on to Tamara. So I will share again just briefly my slides here. And so Tamara is with us here, and she's originally from Finland, but recently moved to live in Israel, made Aliyah. And Tamara's credentials are speaking for themselves. She's an MD, trained in Moscow, and then also taught in Helsinki, has a vast working experience as a family physician, research and developments, lab work, and most important, a background in infectious diseases. So יש לתמר רקע במחלות מדבקות, רופאה, חוקרת, כל מה שתרצו בעצם. יש כמובן, ויש גם המספר המדהים הזה של 100 מאמרים בעיתונים אקדמיים וספרים ובכלל. עכשיו היא בפנסיה, יש לה קליניקה פרטית. זהו. So Tamara, we're moving on to you, and I would probably direct the same question to you as we started with James, as like how or what made that switch to understand that what we're going through is complete nonsense.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to this very important meeting. Thank you, the organizers and the audience. And you know, today is a very special day. today is the Women's Day, the Mother's Day, not the Women's, the Mother's Day. And because I am a mother and I'm a grandmother for 7 children, I do it for all the children, and not only for my children, but for all children, because I love children. And I joined the group. We are not registered group. It's a small group consisting of independent. We have a technical support group, and our group is called Let's Save the Children of Finland. And we started, I'm sorry, we started this activity when we learned that our officials want to give COVID jabs. I cannot call them vaccines. We can speak later if we have time. But we knew already, I'm sorry. So we knew already that these jabs have a lot of adverse effects, and they were already registered in our official by our officials. We have a so-called FIMEA. It's a Finnish version of EMA, European Medicine Agency. So we have similar, but on the national level. And at that time, when they decided to jab children, we decided to stand up and say no. We are objecting jabbing children. So I was awakened already before, and the input for my awareness was the article of Professor Stephanie Seneff. I was at that time in Israel visiting my mom, and I got this article, and the article tells about that the vaccine is worse than the disease. And she was explaining it's a difficult molecular biology stuff. I was reading it 3 days to get understanding why so-called vaccine is so dangerous. And I learned that they are going to inject into our bodies synthetic biology. There is something in it that does not degrade, as they say. They claimed that they put into us mRNA that is not stable, and after a short time it will be degraded, but it's not like that. So they stabilized the mRNA, and they put it into lipid nanoparticles that by themselves, they are very toxic to the human body. And these nanoparticles, they penetrate all organs of the human organisms. It goes through every barrier. It goes through blood-brain barrier. It goes to the brain. It goes to affect fetuses. It goes to reproductive organs of women and men. So it was a disaster when I read what kind of chemical compounds they are going to put into human body. And that was only on the basis what the manufacturers claimed. But after that, there came a lot of publications telling us about the impurities that are put into these ampoules. Also, we know that the quality of the lots, they are variable. Some researchers have found traces of metal traces and probably graphene oxide. And now there are publications that there are circular DNA constructs. They are called plasmids, and plasmids that carry genes that inhibit susceptibility to several antibiotics. And these jabs, the S protein, spike protein that the human body can produce, it can destroy our microbiome in our intestine. It's a very important organ for our health being. The more time is coming, the more we learn what a stuff they put into human body. And the problem here is they don't declare what they put into us and into our children. And when I joined the group, I was a little bit reluctant because I had my own research, and I thought I don't have a capacity to work for two projects. And then I started thinking that this is the most urgent, and I stopped my mold-related illness research, and I started to be activist within this topic. And as a group, we have contacted our officials, our medical officials. We have written a lot of letters to our Ministry of Health, to this Finnish regulatory body. We have written letters to members of our parliament, to our ombudsman, to our Institute of Health and Welfare, everywhere, several letters. And every letter has been documented. We have a very good website. Fortunately, we have support from experienced technical people who help us to do. And one of our medical doctors, she learned how to manage, how to put this information. So everything is free, everything is transparent. And in our letters, we use evidence-based medicine. We use the articles, and we were asking on what basis they recommend these injectables. We also wrote letters to EMA, European Medicinal Agency. We wrote 4 letters. We wrote letters to Finnish Blood Bank, asking them to think about 2 separate lines of production of blood supplies for unjabbed and for the jabbed, especially for the children that might need elective surgery, and they should have a clean blood. And we documented their answers. We wrote also 3 letters to all virologists of our country that work. They are professors in all the universities along the country. We want to have a scientific debate with them, thinking about what's going on in the human body, why the human body is taken as a factory to produce the toxic protein that is toxic to the body itself. So the body is hijacked to produce something that is dangerous for the body. So we wanted this medical scientific debate. And the result is nobody really want to speak with us. So we wrote the letters, we got sometimes answers, but these were just political jargon, nothing really scientific. And as I said, 4 letters to Emma. The major question here was, how do they make quality control of their ampoules? How do they monitor? Because this is the responsible body for the whole European Union. How do they do their quality control? We wanted to have their reports, we wanted to know the methods and so on. And we wrote 4 letters, we got 4 answers. And the last answer was, don't you ever write to us. We don't want to speak with you. It was quite rude answer. So we put everything in our website, and we know that it can be stricken, but we have a very good background, backup. Everything is printed in papers and is saved in a safe place. So one day we may need these letters. So they cannot say they don't know. They knew very well what they are doing. I became very emotional. It's very difficult to speak about this, because we know that what they done to the population, to the people, to the children. This has nothing to do with the public health. And now we raise questions about excess mortality. Everybody in many countries with high so-called vaccination coverage, the mortality has increased. So we call it as excess mortality. So we raise these questions. We raise the questions why we have a drop of birth rate, very sharp drop of birth rate. And the responsible bodies, they did not give us an answer. And we wrote a complaint to our ombudsman, because according to the law, they are responsible to give us the answers. So I wouldn't say that we haven't succeeded. I think we have succeeded in this current situation, because we have the website, and everything, if somebody is interested, can go and see. We don't have anything to hide. We don't do anything in secret. And we know how many people are coming, how many people are opening our sites, and they read. And what
this is good.
It's extremely good. It's extremely good. We are very happy that our small group has done something to inspire people to learn by themselves what's going on. And very funny thing, you know, based on our letters, on our writings, there was done in Oulu University, there was a master degree dissertation. They studied our letters. Of course, they put it in a all our letters. So they took us seriously, and they made the academic research based on our letters. That's great. So I would say it is. We will continue this this work, and we want also to be connected with the international groups. And as a medical doctor, I'm very interested in. First of all, I want to make also in Finland the medical seminar that should be dealt with the treatment, healing of the patients, because this is really a new medical issue. to combine all resources and find out how can we help the injured persons. Now, when I'm going back to Finland, where we are going to have seminar together with injured vaccine injured persons, everything will be recorded. We have done several podcasts, and the best of my podcast gathered 80,000 visits.
Visits. Wow.
Yes, I think it's good. It's a good thing because the more you do, the more people start trusting you, and they want to get the knowledge. So we did the educational podcast. We tried to explain in simple language about the basic immunology, what's going on in the body when people are getting infected or vaccinated. But this has nothing to do with vaccination.
Yeah.
So with these words, I want to inspire also the Israeli group. In my opinion, what should be done first, you should know who are the persons,
the delegates. Yeah.
the delegates, what are their names, and contact them. We know in Finland who are on behalf of the Finnish nation. They go and negotiate. So to have the bridge between you and them, and ask whether they want really to transfer our sovereignty from us to WHO. This is the first step. The second step, in my opinion, to write a letter to every email, to every member of the Knesset, to ombudsmen, to different Kupat Cholim, everywhere, just informing what's going on and asking, are you aware? Do you agree to give up the sovereignty of such a beautiful country that suffered so much, 10 wars, and the people were risking their lives for the country, and what's going on now? You are trading us off. So that kind of dialogue should be started. That I can suggest from my point of view. I really don't know anything about the legal steps, and therefore we need lawyers, people who know international law. But as a medical doctor, I want to have seminars here. That's all what I can say. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tamara. I really, really appreciate this. And of course, everything that you've done so far. Of course, the success is sometimes a little bit limited, and it can be, yeah, it doesn't give a very nice feeling. But, you know, on the other hand, it's not something that we should also expect from them, because this is what we're dealing with. It's up to us to eventually take this and make the people aware, because this will come from underneath up and not from top down. So yeah, thank you so much. It's really helpful also to know that you've had like 80,000 visits to your podcasts. It means that you're reaching out to people.
Yes. Within the population of 5 million, I think it's
quite significant.
Yes, and what I can tell you, maybe it sounds that we haven't achieved any success, but on the other hand, I always want to cite the Jewish wisdom. We say that if we say one life, we say thousands of lives. I don't know, maybe some mothers, after reading our letters and listening to our podcasts, they decided not to give their children for the vaccination. We don't know how many at least if even one child was saved, that's good.
Yes. And I'm seeing here a message from Alfred. Tamara, you're familiar with Alfred. Alfred is a lawyer,
Yes.
and
Yes.
he says he has knowledge in international public law. Alfred, if you are with us, let me see if I can find you in the list here and try to unmute you. Are you ready to talk a little bit, briefly? Oh yeah, there you are, here. Yeah, let me see. Are you able to unmute yourself? I see here.
Unmute.
Oh yes, there.
I certainly hope so. I certainly
Yes.
hope I muted myself.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So thank you so very kindly. First of all, a point of clarification: would you rather me be speaking English or Hebrew? I can do it in both languages
If
with
you
the same
can,
proficiency.
yeah, if you can change between both so that everybody can have some, yeah, some
Okay, I'll try.
information as well, please.
Okay, well, I'll try to introduce the notions and then translate them to Hebrew when we can do it. Okay, point number one, and I'll try to be as structured as I can and as concise as I can. Please understand that almost by definition, the international public law does not have teeth. International public law is by definition not enforceable unless it is internalized in the countries that are relevant. In other words, if a country does not join a treaty, if that country does not take upon itself to adhere to that law, then how would anyone prosecute the citizen of that country in that country? International public law does not have the ability to do that unless the country commits itself internationally to adhere to that international law. Different countries have different procedures of internalizing that law. The way this happens is through signing documents. Some countries, France would be an example, that automatically internalizes international public laws that have been passed through the United Nations. They don't have to go through any procedure. In Israel and other countries, these laws have to go through an additional process of ratification, but that's not everywhere. So what we are basically faced with is a situation that if a number of countries decide independently not to adhere or not to enter the covenant or the agreement with the international community, that to behave or to apply these laws or the international laws to its own citizens or residents of that country, as long as it doesn't want to. Furthermore, a country has the right to amend any treaty. For instance, in our case, the WHO may come up with a list of a bunch of articles that they would want us to sign. The state of Israel or the United States or with whatever other state in the world that would want to join that treaty that is proposed by the WHO could amend that treaty and say, well, I only agree to such and such parts or such and such articles of that treaty, but not to all of it in its entirety. Just to give you an example for that, the state of Israel has amended its acceptance of the Geneva Convention, so that Israel is not part, and I'm not going to get into details, to the fourth protocol of the Geneva Convention, because it said, I don't want to. And so they cannot, by the way, it's a protocol that has to do well, I'm not going to get into that matter. It's just an example so you know that there is such a possibility. What that brings us to is the value and the importance of maintaining the sovereignty of each country. Because what there is a tremendous effort to do is to demolish, to destroy the sovereignty of the countries. And once that sovereignty no longer exists, there will be some international body conducted by some people somewhere, be it the United Nations or something that comes out of that organization, or the World Economic Forum for that matter, okay, that could decide that they are writing the international law. Even if the states do not have sovereignty over their territories and their people, then these treaties will allow the United States or Canada or the European Union or NATO or whoever to enter the territory of any given country to enforce that law from a legal, with some legal authority. That does not exist today. This is why, by the way, to exemplify, every time the States wants to operate in any given country, they are going out and asking for the approval of the European Union, the approval of the United Nations, because they are not allowed to individually decide off the cuff that they will go into that country and enforce the law. Who says that you're allowed to enforce the law? That I don't know, that Argentina is allowed to enforce the law in Israel, or vice versa. It doesn't work that way. Having said all of the above, the only way countries have, and the international community has, to apply pressure on any given country is by applying sanctions of sorts. These sanctions can be individually applied by a country. For instance, if, let's say, I don't know, whichever, let's say Norway, okay, decides that they will not maintain any relationship or any diplomatic relationship or any commercial relationship or any financial relationship or any social relationship with Israel, they can do that. Once a bunch of countries decide not to maintain that relationship with that particular country, that's the power that the international community and the international law has. Otherwise, they have no power. If we were to, for example, take the war in Ukraine at this point, let's see what they're to do to get the entire international community to apply force through sanctions on Russia. But if some country doesn't want to apply the sanctions, there's nothing they can do.
Right. אלפרד, אני רוצה ברשותך, אם אתה יכול לתת סיכום קצר בעברית, יש לנו פה אנשים שמבקשים ככה מאוד בקצר, כי אנחנו קצת גולשים בזמן, בסדר?
אין שום בעיה, בעברית זה יהיה יותר קל אפילו.
כן.
זה יותר קצר, לא יותר קל, יותר קצת. לי אין בעיה, כפי שאת מבינה, אנגלית או עברית, אותו דבר.
כן.
צריך להבין שלחוק הבינלאומי אין שיניים, אין לחוק הבינלאומי שום אפשרות לאכוף משהו על מדינה כלשהי, אלא אם כן היא נכנסת לתוך הסכם שמחליף אותה לאותו פרוטוקול התנהגותי, לאותה נורמה התנהגותית. כך שאם למשל מדינת ישראל החליטה לא להצטרף לאמנת הים, אונקלוס, United Nations Convention, שיכול להכריח את מדינת ישראל להצטרף לאמנה הזאת. באמנה הזאת למשל, הטריבונל שקובע הוא הטריבונל הספציפי של אותה אמנה, אבל ישראל לא כפופה לאותו טריבונל בגלל שהיא לא הצטרפה לאותה אמנה. הדרך היחידה שבה ניתן לאכוף את המשפט הבינלאומי על מדינה כלשהי באשר היא תהיה שם, היא דרך, בהנחה שהיא לא נכנסה לתוך הסכם או לתוך אמנה בינלאומית, היא על ידי הפעלת כוח של סנקציות. סנקציות יכולות להיות כלכליות, תרבותיות, מדעיות, ובמקרה של ארצות הברית, דרך אני חייב לציין, גם צבאיות. ארצות הברית, בגלל הגודל והמיקום שלה בחוק הבינלאומי, מסוגלת לה גם סנקציות צבאיות, כי היא תקף מספיק מדינות כדי שתיכנס איתה לתוך איזשהו הסכם, ואז היא לא תבוא כמדינת ארצות הברית, זה אסור לה, למרות שגם את זה היא עושה, אבל היא תיכנס כחלק מאיזושהי קבוצה. הדבר הזה חשוב מאוד, משום שזה מדגיש את החשיבות שיש לריבונות של כל מדינה על השטח והאנשים שלה. אין למשפט הבינלאומי שום דרך לאכוף את עצמו על אדם פרטי, אלא אם כן אותו אדם פרטי מגיע למדינה שבה אותה מדינה הכפיפה את עצמה לאותו חוק. כך למשל, קצינים ישראליים שהחוק הבינלאומי, המשפט הבינלאומי, או ה-ICC, שזה ה-International Criminal Court, רוצה לשפוט אותם, אין שום דרך להביא אותם במשפט הבינלאומי למשפט, אלא אם כן אותו חייל יגיע למדינה שהכניסה את עצמה למקום הזה. אז אל תיבהלו, יש גם דרך לצאת מהאמנות. עוד נקודה אחת.
זה חשוב מאוד מה שאתה מציין.
אוקיי. אם אני צריך להוסיף, אבל צריך לעשות את זה בחוכמה ולהיאבק על זה. אי אפשר להשאיר את זה, הדברים צריכים להיות כתובים בצורה מאוד מאוד ברורה, משפטית בצורה מאוד נכונה. זה לא, והנה פה בעניין הזה אני אומר, בתוך עמי אני חי. חבר'ה, הפלאפ הישראלי לא ילך בסוג הזה של המאבק, שלא תהיינה אי הבנות. יתרה מזו, אפילו בכניסה לאמנה, ניתן להתנות על סעיפים מסוימים, כך שהאמנה שמוכנים להיכנס אליה, נבוא ונגיד, אני מוכן להיכנס לאמנה, אבל אני לא רוצה את כל הסעיפים, יש סעיפים א' וי"ד שעליהם אני מתנה או שאליהם אני לא נכנס, וזה מותר, גם זה מותר. עד כאן, אני חושב שהעליתי את הדברים פחות או יותר בצורה טובה, אני מקווה שתרמתי.
האמת שאני שומעת אותך ואני חייבת לומר שזה קצת מרגיע אותי. I'm listening to him and it kind of calms me down a little bit, because basically what he says is that it doesn't matter what they can sign, but they really have not much power over us and over making this in a legal way. The international law cannot make us, cannot force it on us. I see that
unless we
James
accept it a priori.
Yes, and that is the key here. ולנטינה, אולי תכתבי בצ'אט את מה שאת רוצה להגיד, פשוט אנחנו ככה מסתכלת על הזמן וכבר קבענו שנסיים עוד מעט. אז אם את רוצה לכתוב בצ'אט זה יהיה בסדר, אלא אם כן זה ממש קצר. קצר? סליחה? אוקיי, אז תשחררי את עצמך מהמיוט. יופי.
Okay, I just want to ask two questions that Tamar asked. I want to answer to two questions that Tamar asked and at her speech. She said that we have to check if the sovereignty of Israel will be in danger if Israel joins the international treaty of W.H.O. And the answer is yes, because in the proportional treaty, there is all of the parties has to agree that W.H.O. will be able to enter to territory of every country and the authorities of this country will have to allow to people from WHO to enter every place in this country. So the answer is yes. It's really the real danger to the sovereignty. The second question was
my question was rhetoric to ask if there is a danger. Certainly, I know there is a danger, but when you write a letter, so that is a rhetoric question. Sorry.
Okay. We wrote this letter. The lawyer Batya Zakt and myself, we wrote such letter 1 year ago to our Minister of Defense. And I know that he did receive this letter to his hand, and we had no answer.
Yeah, well, that is to be expected, obviously.
Okay.
James, yes, thank you very much, Valentina. James, if you want, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to Alfred. I put information in the chat. You are absolutely correct in all of the things that you're saying about the accepted norms. Okay. And I would just welcome the opportunity to talk to you further, obviously after the meeting anytime. Please review Article 4 of the proposed amendments. That's where they instruct the change. Nations who agreed to the amendments would agree to implementing legislation giving authority to what they would call the IHR focal point. And the wording is such that they would be authorized within the nation to implement the regulations as, per the obligations of agreeing to them. So Article 4, proposed by all nations, of all nations, proposed by Russia to change Article 4 of the International Health Regulations, would mandate that nations implement national legislation to abide by the proposed amendments. And also in the zero draft, please take a look very specifically at Articles 25, which go against the norms that you mentioned, and I agree with you. But in this particular case, there would be no reservations to the treaty. It appears that it would be all or nothing. You're either in or not. You don't get to have reservations about it. And Article 35 would make it happen very rapidly. So I agree with all the things you're saying, all that, obviously you're knowledgeable about the topic, would welcome the opportunity to talk to you further about those specific things whenever you get a chance.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, רגע, חכה, תשתחרר מהמיוט.
Yeah. James, you're absolutely correct. I understand what you're saying. Everything that you've said basically amounts to the state relinquishing its sovereignty a priori. If the state does not relinquish then that's where the problem is. The problem is the relinquishment of the state sovereignty.
And if I may, and I welcome the opportunity to talk to you further at some point, as an example, not a horrific example, but as a concrete example, last year, unbeknownst to most people, amendments were adopted 12 months of the 18-month period by which nations could proactively reject those amendments have been met with 12 months of silence and ignorance. If another 6 months go by, those amendments the period to reject them will pass. They'll enter into force 24 months after that. And so that is an example of how, without action by the people, our governments will choose to do nothing, and doing nothing is the method by which those things enter into force. It's a cognitive dissonance where, with a treaty, people believe, oh, Parliament would have to approve it, or the Senate would have to give its advice and consent, or the Prime Minister would have to sign it. I'm not talking about the treaty. I'm talking about amendments to an existing agreement, the IHRs, that built into the IHR, the method by which they are amended merely requires us to not pay attention. Time passes by, and that agreement enters into legal binding effect. So love to talk to you about it anytime. You know, it's quite a predicament we find ourselves in, where our government is not listening. Our government is not paying attention, many of them, and their acquiescence, their silence, allows obligations to enter into force. And then you're absolutely right. But unfortunately, around the world, Western Australia is a horrific example. They are already implementing, they are already passing laws to implement the treaty that hasn't even been negotiated yet. So we have to be vigilant. We have to pay attention.
Yeah, well, they did something that is by definition criminal, but it's not considered such because they changed the default condition. Let's say, for instance, that I would say, James owes me $100. Denies it in 2 months. If James doesn't deny it in 2 months, now he owes me $100. That's not the normal, natural default condition, but that's what they did. It's a demagogical way of approaching things, and we will take it further in a conversation. I'm sure. I hope it will have.
All my contact information is in the chat.
You guys need to talk and have a beer or something together.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. It's actually fascinating to listen to all of you. I think I would like to try to summarize here what we've heard, and just to briefly share some of the things we've heard here, and that was some points that Tamara also brought up to me also before this call. So here's what we have to do with what I think, and some others that we heard here have to do. We need to find out, first of all, who are the people in the delegation, in the Israeli delegation. We need to target them. We need to meet them and ask them if they are truly aware of what they're doing and what they're signing, and then and also record the answer. We need to write letters to all the members of the parliament, the Israeli Knesset, and to the people in all public roles. That's what Tamar said as well, to the people of the Kupat Cholim and all of these people in public roles. We need to reach out to the people and educate them. That's something we can do. And then she had another original out-of-box suggestion, I think, which is basically to connect with the Israeli high-tech people, all these people that are funding their own demonstrations for the Israeli democracy, and try to see if we can turn their heads into a different direction, because basically now they're not focused on the right goal. Let's put it this way. And then from James, we've also heard as well similar things and similar ideas. And James, what would you like to say? Tell me.
Two things. We talked earlier before the recording that when the assembly meets next week and they all give their credentials, all of the delegations, that information will very likely be made available, all of the delegates around the world. So we'll get an updated version of that next week. And Mina Kaleni made a statement, which I very much agree with in the chat. Some of these things are so egregiously bad that it's a blessing. They're so bad that people cannot ignore what's going on. And so I very much agree with that.
Yes. And Mina is a good friend. He's a physician and a researcher in Egypt, and he became a friend from many publications that he wrote. And I contacted him personally, and then he's here. So thank you very much for joining us and also being here in the background. So this is another opportunity for another international collaboration, right? Also on the medical side for you, Tamara. You should read these articles. All right, and then I would like to, so this is what we're gonna do. And then here, let me just share once more my screen. So what we're basically left with is that we have 3 key questions that we really, I think, we thought we need to focus on, and that is that we need to ask our people, the people that we are targeting in our letters, like, are you aware that such negotiations are actually taking place? האם אתם מודעים לכך שהדברים האלה מתרחשים בעצם? Are you ready to give up your sovereignty of yourself and your children to a single unelected ruler? After the people of Israel lost all their loved ones in all these wars and all the history that we've had, האם אתם מוכנים לאבד את הסוברניות לגוף שהוא בעצם לא נבחר? And why are these negotiations so secretive? We need to understand why they're doing this in such a way. Like, what do they have to hide? And I think as well, another point that I was thinking about is that, you know, I don't know if they really understand that whatever they're negotiating for will come to haunt them and their families. It's not like it's, you know, they're going to be spared from it and it's just going to fall on us. So כל דבר שבעצם קורה יבוא גם לתקוף אותם בסופו של דבר, את כל אלה שעושים את המשא ומתן הזה, את הילדים שלהם, את המשפחות שלהם, אותם בעצמם, הם לא מעל החוק. הם חושבים אולי שהם מעל החוק, אבל הם לא. אז זהו בעצם מה שקורה. This is a summary of all what we've discussed. יש קבוצות שמתארגנות בכל מיני תחומים, כמו שראיתם, יש קבוצות לפעילות פרלמנטרית, לפעילות של בתחום עריכת דין ומשפטים, medical treatment. Tamara would like to set up a group that will specialize in the medical treatment and support. יש כבר קבוצה פעילה ומצליחה של תרגומים, אני חלק ממנה. אם יש חומרים טובים לתרגם, לשים כתוביות לסרטים, אנחנו פה, אתם יכולים לפנות אליי. אנחנו צריכים אולי אנשים שיעזרו בגרפיקה, ובעצם זה קריאה לכולם, פשוט לבוא, לקחת צעד קדימה ולבוא ולתת את מה שהם יכולים בדברים שהם טובים בהם, כדי לתרום וכדי לעשות וכדי שכולנו נצליח בכל המאמץ האדיר שמחכה לנו, לפחות עכשיו בשנה הקרובה. כאילו שמצאתי של הלן קלר, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. אז זה משהו שמאוד חשוב לזכור, אנחנו לא לבד, כמו שאתם רואים, גם בפינלנד דברים קורים, גם במצרים, גם בארצות הברית, בכל מקום יש משהו כזה, וזה בדרך כלל קורה באותו תזמון. אז בואו נתאחד, בואו נעשה דברים, נשכח מהאגו, נשכח מזה מתמורות ותרומות ומה שצריך פשוט לעשות, כי זה חשוב, כי אנחנו מבינים את ההשפעה של זה ואת מה שזה עושה לעתיד שלנו. And that was the Q&A part, so we actually kind of put this together throughout the presentation. We spoke and we had some questions that we were addressing. And so I think with this being said, I think unless anybody else has some last little things to say, or a sentence here, a sentence or two. I would like to just close the meeting. יש לנו תיבת דואר, we have an email address. You can write to us with all kinds of ideas. Start grouping, start doing stuff. We're there to support, and yeah. And thank you so much, everybody that was here tonight. It's so much appreciated. All right. So anyone else, just one last thing to say, or we can close? If we're happy to close, then that's just it. Then I'll wish you a wonderful evening and a great day, James. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And we will see you all around. Keep in touch with each other and with us. Bye-bye.